Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're diving into a pretty massive subject today, the fall of the Western Roman Empire.
Yeah, it's one of those historical events that just captures the imagination, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, we're talking about an empire that, at its peak, spanned from, Britain all the way to North Africa.
Exactly. They controlled pretty much the entire Mediterranean world for centuries.
It's incredible to think that such a powerful empire could eventually just crumble and disappear.
Right. It makes you wonder what could possibly bring down a civilization that seemed so, invincible and dominant for so long.
That's what we're going to explore today, right? Like, what were the forces that led to this decline and fall?
Yeah, exactly. And it's not a simple answer. There's no one single cause that we can point to. It's more like a complex web of factors that all contributed over time.
So it wasn't just, barbarians at the gates or a sudden collapse.
No, not at all. It was a much slower process, a kind of gradual unraveling that took centuries to play out.
Okay, so where do we even begin with a story that spans centuries?
Well, a good place to start is with the Roman Empire at its height, during the 1st and 2nd centuries AD.
Ah, the Golden Age. I've always been fascinated by that period.
Yeah, it was an incredible time for Rome. They had emperors like Trajan, Hadrian, Marcus Aurelius.
Names that are still synonymous with Roman power and achievement, right?
Exactly. These emperors expanded the empire, built incredible infrastructure, promoted trade, and oversaw a flourishing of art and literature.
It was a period of stability, prosperity, and really, cultural dominance for Rome.
Right, Rome was at the center of the world, and it seemed like nothing could shake its foundations.
So how did things start to go wrong? When did those cracks begin to appear?
Well, the 3rd central AD is where we start to see the empire facing some serious challenges.
Okay, so what happened? Did they just overextend themselves?
That's part of it, but there were also a lot of internal problems brewing within Roman society.
Like what?
Well, for one thing, the economy started to take a nosedive. They had runaway inflation, declining agricultural production, and the government was constantly raising taxes to try and pay for its military campaigns and lavish building projects.
So people were feeling the squeeze financially.
Absolutely. The middle class was shrinking, the poor were struggling to survive, and even the wealthy were starting to feel the pinch.
And what about the political situation? Was there stability?
Not really. The 3rd century saw a period of intense political instability with a constant stream of emperors coming and going, often through violence.
Oh, wow. So like assassinations and coups?
Yeah, exactly. It was a very turbulent time with a lot of power struggles and infighting.
So the empire was kind of imploding from within?
In a way, yes. While Rome was dealing with all these internal problems, it was also facing growing external threats.
Right, the famous barbarian invasions.
Exactly. Tribes like the Goths, Vandals, and Alemanni were pushing at the empire's borders.
I always imagine these barbarians as kind of like these savage hordes just wanting to pillage and destroy.
Well, it's more complicated than that. Many of these tribes were migrating due to pressures like climate change or overpopulation. They were searching for new lands and resources.
So they saw the Roman Empire as a target of opportunity.
In a sense, yes. The Roman Empire was wealthy, and its borders were becoming increasingly difficult to defend.
So you've got this perfect storm brewing, internal turmoil, economic problems, and external threats, all converging at the same time.
Exactly. And this is where things really start to get interesting because Rome has to find a way to adapt and survive.
So did they? Did anyone try to address these challenges?
Yeah, there were a few emperors who tried to reform the system and restore stability. One of the most important was Diocletian.
Diocletian, he's the one who divided the empire, right?
That's right. He implemented the tetrarchy, a system where the empire was divided into 4 administrative units, each ruled by a co-emperor.
It sounds like a pretty drastic measure. Why did he do that?
Well, Diocletian realized that the empire had become too large and unwieldy for one person to rule effectively, so he divided it up to try and improve efficiency and control.
It makes sense, but didn't that division ultimately contribute to the empire's eventual split?
You could argue that, yeah, in a way, the tetrarchy foreshadowed the eventual division between the Western and Eastern Roman empires.
So Diocletian tried to fix things by dividing the empire. What about Constantine? What were his big moves?
Well, Constantine's most impactful decision was moving the capital from Rome to Constantinople.
Wow. That's a huge shift. Why did he do that?
Well, Constantinople was strategically located on the Bosporus Strait at the crossroads of Europe and Asia. It was a much better position for controlling trade and defending the empire's eastern borders.
So it was a strategic move to strengthen the empire.
Exactly. And it also reflected the growing importance of the eastern provinces, which were wealthier and more stable than the West.
And this is also around the time that Christianity started to become a major force within the empire, right?
Yeah, that's right. Constantine issued the Edict of Milan in 313 AD, which granted religious tolerance to Christians.
So he basically ended their persecution.
Exactly. This paved the way for Christianity to eventually become the official religion of the Roman Empire.
Wow, so we have a divided empire, a new capital, and a rising new religion. All these changes must have had a huge impact on Roman society.
They did. These developments reflect a period of immense transformation and turmoil for the Roman Empire.
And I'm guessing this is just the beginning of the story, right?
Oh, yeah, we're just getting started. The best is yet to come.
I can't wait to hear more. So let's take a quick break and then we'll dive back into this fascinating tale of the fall of the Roman Empire.
It's interesting. We often talk about the fall of Rome, but it's not like everything just vanished overnight.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's not like they just disappeared off the map.
Right. In fact, Roman influence continued to shape the world for centuries after the Western Empire fell.
So it's more like a transformation than a complete ending.
Exactly. The Roman legacy is incredibly complex and far-reaching, and it's still visible in many ways today.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's dive into that legacy. Where do we see the most prominent examples of Rome's lasting impact?
Well, one of the most obvious examples is the survival of the Eastern Roman Empire.
Ah, yes. They kept the torch burning in the East for centuries after the West fell.
That's right. The Eastern Roman Empire, also known as the Byzantine Empire, centered in Constantinople, flourished for another 1,000 years.
Wow, 1,000 years. That's incredible.
It really is. And they didn't just cling to the past. The Byzantines developed their own unique identity, blending Roman traditions with Greek culture and influences from the East.
So it was a fusion of different cultures and ideas?
Exactly. They preserved and adapted Roman law administrative systems and military strategies, but they also add in their own distinct flavor.
It sounds like a fascinating blend of continuity and change.
It was. The Byzantines played a crucial role in preserving classical knowledge and transmitting it to the later medieval world.
So they were like a bridge between the ancient world and the Middle Ages.
Precisely. They kept the flame of Roman civilization alive in a new and evolving form.
That's amazing. But what about the West, where the empire had actually fallen? Did Roman influence just disappear there?
Not at all. While the Western Roman Empire fractured into various Germanic kingdoms, Roman influence persisted in many ways.
Really? So how did that manifest itself?
Well, for starters, think about language Latin. The language of the Roman Empire didn't just vanish.
Oh yeah, true. I never really thought about it that way.
It evolved and transformed into the Romance languages we know today: French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, Romanian.
Wow, so the languages spoken by millions of people today are directly descended from the language of the Roman Empire.
That's right. It's a testament to the enduring power of Roman culture. And it's not just a language. Roman law also had a profound influence on Western civilization.
Ah yes, those toga-clad lawyers left their mark.
They certainly did. Roman legal principles, concepts of justice, due process, and codified legal systems all shaped the development of law in Europe and beyond.
So even today when we step into a courtroom, we're stepping into a space influenced by Roman legal traditions?
You could say that, yeah, the Roman legacy is all around us, even if we don't always realize it.
It's mind-blowing to think about. And what about their famous engineering feats? Did those also leave a lasting impact?
Of course, Roman engineering was incredibly advanced for its time, and their achievements in infrastructure, architecture, and urban planning are still visible today.
I always think of those iconic Roman aqueducts, some of which are still standing after centuries.
They're a remarkable testament to Roman ingenuity. They built roads, bridges, aqueducts, amphitheaters, and public baths all across their vast empire.
It's incredible to think of the scale of their infrastructure projects.
It really is. And these structures weren't just impressive from an engineering standpoint. They also played a key role in connecting the empire, facilitating trade communication and cultural exchange.
So they were both practical and symbolic.
Exactly, and they helped to create a sense of unity and identity across the vast Roman world.
Fascinating. But, we can't talk about Rome's legacy without mentioning the spread of Christianity.
Absolutely. That's perhaps one of the most significant impacts of the Roman Empire on world history.
Right. We talked about Constantine's embrace of Christianity earlier. It's incredible to think how a once persecuted sect transformed into a state religion and then into a dominant force in Western civilization.
It's a remarkable story, and even after the fall of the Western Roman Empire, The church remained a powerful institution in Europe, providing continuity and stability amidst the chaos.
So in a way, the church helped to preserve aspects of Roman culture and tradition.
Yes, in many ways, the church preserved classical knowledge, promoted literacy through monastic schools, and influenced art, architecture, and political thought throughout the Middle Ages.
Wow, so Rome's legacy isn't just about physical structures or even legal systems. It also extends to the realm of ideas and beliefs.
Exactly. Rome's influence is incredibly multifaceted, and it continues to shape the world we live in today.
It's truly mind-boggling to think about. So if we had to distill all of this down to a few key takeaways, what would you say are the most important things to understand about Rome's enduring legacy?
Well, one key takeaway is the concept of cultural transmission. The Romans were incredibly adept at absorbing and adapting ideas from other cultures.
So they were like master borrowers, taking the best from different civilizations and making it their own.
Yeah, you could say that they were open to new ideas and influences, and they weren't afraid to experiment and innovate.
It sounds like a recipe for success.
It certainly was for the Romans, and it's a valuable lesson for any society. Being open to new perspectives and willing to learn from others can be a source of strength and renewal.
It's a reminder that cultures are constantly evolving and interacting with each other.
Precisely. And that cross-cultural exchange can lead to incredible advancements and innovations.
But, it's important to remember that the Roman story isn't all sunshine and roses. There were some darker chapters as well.
Of course, no civilization is perfect. And the Romans certainly had their share of flaws and contradictions.
Right, they were a conquering empire with a complex relationship with slavery, and they often pursued power ruthlessly.
It's essential to acknowledge these complexities and to view history through a critical lens. We can admire their accomplishments, but we should also be aware of their shortcomings.
So it's about having a balanced perspective on history, recognizing both the good and the bad.
Absolutely. And it's about understanding that historical narratives are constantly being shaped and reshaped by new evidence and interpretations.
That's a good point. History is not static. It's an ongoing conversation, an evolving process of discovery and understanding.
Exactly. And as we learn more about the Roman world, our understanding of its complexities and contradictions continues to deepen.
It's a fascinating journey of exploration. But let's bring it back to our listeners for a moment. Why should they care about the fall of the Roman Empire? What makes this ancient history relevant to our modern world?
That's the key question, isn't it? Why delve into the past? Well, the Roman Empire, despite its flaws, achieved remarkable things. It left behind a legacy that still shapes our world in profound ways.
So by studying their rise and fall, we can gain valuable insights into the dynamics of power, the complexities of civilization, and the enduring nature of human ambition and ingenuity.
Absolutely. And we can also learn from their mistakes and hopefully avoid repeating them.
It's a reminder that even the mightiest empires are not immune to decline and fall.
Right. And as we face our own challenges in the 21st century, climate change, political polarization, economic inequality, understanding how past societies grappled with similar issues can offer valuable perspectives.
So it's not just about looking back at the past, it's about using that knowledge to inform our present and perhaps even shape our future.
Exactly. By studying history, we can gain a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
So delving into the fall of the Roman Empire isn't just an exercise in ancient history. It's an opportunity to engage in a dialogue with the past, seeking wisdom and perspective that can guide us in the present.
Beautiful put. And on that note, we've covered a lot of ground in this part of our deep dive.
We've explored the multifaceted legacy of Rome, tracing its influence on language, law, engineering, religion, and cultural values.
We've also considered how historical narratives evolve and how our understanding of the past is constantly being shaped by new discoveries and perspectives.
But there's one final question we need to address. What can we learn from Rome's experience to avoid a similar fate? What wisdom can we glean from their mistakes and triumphs?
That's a question that will lead us into the final part of our deep dive.
Okay, so we're back and ready to tackle that big question. What lessons can we actually learn from Rome's fall? Like, are there things that apply to us today?
Yeah, it's a question that's, haunted historians and philosophers for centuries. I mean, there's that saying, right? History doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes.
Okay, so let's see if we can find some of those rhymes. Where should we even begin?
Well, remember how we talked about those internal weaknesses that really plagued the late Roman Empire?
Yeah, things like economic instability and political corruption, right?
Exactly. And social divisions, too. Do any of those sound familiar? Like, in our modern world,
Well, yeah, they're not exactly unheard of concepts today, are they?
Right. Think about the economic anxiety so many people are feeling right now. Or the erosion of trust in institutions, the rise of populism and polarization. I mean, these aren't identical problems to what Rome faced, but they rhyme a bit, right?
Okay, so you're not saying that modern societies are like on the verge of collapse right now, are you?
Not necessarily, but Rome's story is a good reminder, I think. It shows how even those really powerful societies can be vulnerable, especially to those internal pressures, just like internal divisions weakened Rome, our own societies can be weakened by things like corruption and inequality, or if we lose that sense of shared purpose.
Okay, that's a pretty sobering thought, I have to admit. So internal weaknesses are one parallel we can draw. What about external threats, though? Like Rome had those barbarian invasions. What are our modern-day barbarians at the gates?
Well, I mean, we're not facing like hordes of Goths or anything, but we do have our global challenges. Things like climate change, pandemics, cyber attacks, terrorism, all those kinds of things. They all transcend borders and need cooperation to really address them.
It's almost like the barbarians have gone digital.
Yeah, in a way. And just like Rome struggled to adapt to those external pressures, modern societies are doing the same. We're trying to figure out how to respond to a world that's changing so fast.
So we've got internal weaknesses and external threats. Any other big historical parallels we can draw?
Let's see. Oh, yeah, the rise of new powers. Remember how the Eastern Roman Empire became more powerful as the West declined?
Yeah. And that shift had huge consequences.
Absolutely. It was like the center of gravity shifted. And I think we're seeing something similar today. Like in the 21st century, we see the rise of new powers, especially in Asia.
So you're saying this shift could challenge those existing power structures like it did back in Roman times?
Yeah, potentially. But it doesn't have to mean downfall for the West. It could also be an opportunity for adaptation, cooperation, maybe a rebalancing of global power.
So instead of seeing it as a threat, we should think of it as a chance to do things differently, build new partnerships, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Rome's long reign was all about adaptation. And that's crucial for us today, too, I think, especially with all the challenges we face.
Okay, so far we've identified some pretty clear parallels. Internal weaknesses, external threats, new powers on the rise. But what does it all mean for us today? Like, what can we actually do with this information?
One big takeaway for me is how important it is to invest in our social fabric. Just like Rome was weakened by internal divisions, modern societies need to address things like inequality and corruption and that social fragmentation. We have to build that sense of shared purpose and civic responsibility, especially if we want to, weather the storms ahead.
So it's about strengthening our communities, making them more resilient.
Exactly. And just like Rome relied on a strong military to defend its borders, modern societies need to think about their collective security too. And that's more than just military strength. It's diplomacy, intelligence, and cooperating globally on things like climate change.
So we're stronger when we work together.
Exactly. And finally, I think we need to be adaptable, just like Rome had to adjust to new circumstances. We have to be open to innovation, new ideas, and evolve to meet these challenges. The world is changing fast.
It's a lot to think about. But it's also pretty inspiring. Like learning from Rome could actually help us build a better future.
Yeah, I think so. Studying the past can give us insights and maybe even help us avoid some of those mistakes they made. Rome's fall wasn't inevitable. It was a result of choices. And we have choices too. We can shape our own destiny.
So as we wrap up, what's one final thought you'd like to leave with our listeners today?
I'd say keep exploring Rome's story. It's full of, triumphs and tragedies, wisdom and folly. And there are so many lessons for us in there. Learning from the past can really help us understand ourselves and the world we live in today.
Well said. And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the fall of the Western Roman Empire. Thanks for joining us on this journey through time. We've covered a lot: the decline, the legacy, and what it all means for us today.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating conversation. Hopefully it's given everyone something to think about.
Absolutely. So until our next deep dive, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning from the past. 2023.